Hello, it's good to see you. We are back to discuss Tiger King for the third and final time. The first video I did was 2 days ago where we went over episodes 1 through 3. And then the one I did last night, we went over 4, 5, and 6. And I was under the impression that there were a total of 8 episodes because when I was looking at it on Netflix, I kind of scrolled through and I saw that there were 8 videos, but I didn't realize the 8th thing was, I guess it was a trailer, a preview or whatever. So this one is just going to be about the 7th episode, which was the final one. And everybody told me, as you go along, it gets more dark and it's really sad. And it was really sad. So yeah, I have a few things to say about the people involved in this as far as just my impression of them. But again, it's going to be kind of like the last video where we went over 4, 5, and 6, because it's mainly just me telling you. See, I made notes. I make all these notes about everything, and I'm sitting there pausing it over and over so I can write down stuff. Let me see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of notes, and that's just on episode 7. I've always been a very meticulous note taker. I would fill up an entire notebook for a class because I was just, I don't know, it's just what I love taking notes. I don't know why. Okay, so we start out the final episode of this documentary with Tim Stark from Wildlife in Need and Jeff, and they became partners in the GW Zoo in Thackerville, Oklahoma. I don't know. I can't read my own handwriting. Some of this I was scribbling because sometimes I get tired of pausing and I just try to scribble it down. And Tim, at the beginning of that episode, said he wasn't worried about the fallout from Joe's case. Remember, he got arrested down in Florida. Tim said he wasn't worried about any of that affecting them. Now, back in Wynnewood, Wynnewood is where the GW Zoo was originally. Now, at the beginning of episode 7, we're at Thackerville. It may be Thackersville. I can't read it. But they ended up moving the zoo ultimately, which is what James suggested, but he didn't get credit for it. I think Jeff kind of blew him off and said, whatever. But he ultimately ended up moving the zoo. But, back in Wynnewood, Jeff let the feds come onto the property at the zoo and go into Joe's residence, and where he stayed there. And the feds went through his documents, junk drives, and all sorts of things. Now that's according to James. That's what James said Jeff did. They also did some digging on the property, and I wonder if this is something that Jeff tipped him off to. While they were there, he might have said, hey, by the way, you might want to do some digging over there, because they did some digging, and they dug up the bones of 5 big cats on the property. And I think Jeff had to have told them about it. Otherwise, how would they have known? It turns out that Joe shot 5 tigers, and while the feds were there, they dug them up and found the skulls of 5 adult tigers. And then they talked to Doc about that. And Doc Antle from Myrtle Beach, he said they trumped up a bunch of wildlife charges to put pressure on Joe because the murder for hire charge was so flimsy. Well, I don't know that I'd say it was flimsy. There was quite a lot of evidence showing that, he hired somebody to kill Carol. I don't think I'd say it was flimsy exactly. He said it makes Joe appear to be this great big felonious murderer. If you throw in wildlife charges, that really gets people's attention, and it makes you look extra bad. So you don't just have the murder for hire charges, you have this other thing on top of it. So it's like, yeah, not only did he do that, but here's another terrible thing that he did. And we have proof of that because we have the skulls of these tigers. And then at this point, Joe, they were interviewing Joe on the phone, and he said that they threatened him with 79 years. And Joe did admit to euthanizing 5 tigers that I guess had to be put down. And so at this point, then they go back to Jeff, and Jeff said the ghost of Joe will always haunt the Wynnewood location. It's like everywhere you go around there, it's just, it's like you feel, it's just, that was Joe's zoo. And he said he felt like he couldn't shake that. I think he wanted to move away from the stigma. I don't think it was so much that he felt the place, oh, this is Joe's zoo. No, he was looking out for himself, and he knew that he could make more money if he moved, like James suggested, move the zoo closer to Texas. You get more people with money who are willing to come to your zoo instead of being where you are. But he said it was because of the ghost of Joe. That's the reason he moved to Thackerville. Although that was originally James's idea. And James chuckled when he saw a clip of Jeff saying, talking about his brilliant idea to move the zoo. Like, yeah, that was my idea. Okay, but after they moved to Thackerville, things between James and Jeff soured. Now, you remember, James is the one who allegedly took money from Joe to go to Florida and kill Carol. And remember, he was paid him $3,000 to go do that. Well, James and Jeff weren't getting along too well. And James said that Jeff would have been indicted along with Joe if it weren't for James. I'm sorry, no, James isn't the one that went. Lord have I. There are too many people with names that start with J. No, James did not go to kill Carol. Alan went to kill Carol. I am so sorry. His name doesn't even start with a J, but it might as well because everybody else's name does. James is the businessman. And I think James wanted to be a partner in the zoo, but Jeff said no. Yeah, and James was the one who kind of got Jeff that deal, like he couldn't be immune. He couldn't get him immunity, but he said, no, if you'll work with the feds, they won't be so hard on you. And James said that Jeff would have been indicted along with Joe if it weren't for James, because he got him that deal with the feds. But Jeff said that's not why things went bad between them at all. He said things went bad because James couldn't possibly have afforded to pitch in. Like, he couldn't afford to be an actual partner in the zoo. And I guess maybe he thought, he's trying to make it sound like, well, James was just, grumpy about it because he couldn't be a partner, and that's why things went bad between us. How involved was Jeff in the plan to kill Carol? I think he was extremely involved. I mean, I do believe they had conversations about it. I do believe he wouldn't have had a problem with it. James said that Jeff helped put the thing together. Talking about, well, on the bike path, she's alone. We could get her out there. And he was looking at it on Google Maps, so he put a lot of thought into it. And Jeff told James on the phone that he was going to use Alan Glover. Said Alan Glover was going to be the one to do it. And Alan said that Joe offered him money to go murder Carol. And at first it was going to be $5,000, but he could only come up with $3,000. So Alan said, I took that and I ran. He just took off with it. All right, now there's John, who was the manager of the GW Zoo. He worked with Joe for 14 years. And so it's time for the trial. And John said, I don't know if I can get him out of this. Like, I don't know what I can do. And the people whose lives were intertwined with Joe for years were the ones who were going to be testifying against him. And I imagine they had some mixed feelings about that. I'm sure, to a certain extent, at least a few of them were happy to do it. And they didn't mind doing it. But others, I think it was probably really hard for them. Okay, we have another J, Joshua. That's Joe's former campaign manager. So the feds talked to Joshua and said, you're either going to be on Team Government or Team Joe, as far as testifying. And Joshua said it was the scariest moment of his life. And then we find out that Joe is going to plead not guilty and, going to say that he didn't do any of this stuff. And then one of the reporters said, the general public can tolerate a murderer more than they can tolerate someone who commits animal abuse. It's almost like they don't look as harshly at somebody who murders a person. So it was strategic on the part of the feds to include the animal abuse charges, all of the evidence, testimony, pictures, videos, anything relating to animal abuse in this trial to influence the jury. That was a pretty smart thing to do. And Carol was surprised that Joe didn't want to kill her himself. And honestly, I kind of am too. As much as he talked about it and, did mock-ups of it and mimicked doing it, I mean, I don't know, maybe when it comes right down to it, like, he wanted to, but maybe he didn't have the guts to, something. But she said she was surprised he didn't want to do it himself and that he would pay somebody else to do it. But she said that she wasn't surprised that he did try to follow through with getting her killed. And she also said the only positive thing that would have come out of her getting killed was it would have pushed the movement, the big cat rescue. It would have pushed that movement forward, so it would have been worth it. Okay, and then you have John Finley, one of Joe's ex-husbands, testified against Joe for the murder for hire and for animal abuse. So he did testify against him for both things. He was Joe's right-hand man for 16 years. And John did testify that in 2017, Joe told him he needed to drive a man, Alan, to Dallas to purchase a fake ID so he could go to Florida and kill Carol. So he did testify to that. I think that was the first time we heard about that. And John, of course, was there in the courtroom, and he said he didn't see anybody there that was on Joe's side. Like there were people testifying and there were people sitting on that side of the courtroom, but they weren't like there for him. So I wonder, were his parents there? Was his husband there? I don't know. I don't know if they were there or not, but John Finley's saying that he didn't see anybody there for Joe, which, as much of a butthole as Joe is, that kind of sucks that, that would be terrible. But I don't know all the circumstances around it. I don't know. But that would just suck to have nobody there for you. And let's see, James testified that Jeff was actively involved in planning Carol's murder, which I totally believe. I think Jeff is a total scumbag. I don't like him. I do believe he's a con man, and I think he's greasy as hell, and I don't like him. He's always got that smirk on his face, like, I don't like him. Jeff did not testify because he would have perjured himself. Alan testified, and then afterwards, Joe was talking on the phone from the prison, and he wondered why Alan wasn't questioned about lying on the stand. He said he perjured himself up there, and, isn't that something we need to do something about? And Alan testified that he did go to Florida, but Joe says that he did not. Joe said they had phone recordings to prove that Alan never went to Florida. Now, I don't know what phone recordings he's talking about. I don't know how a phone recording would prove. How do you prove somebody didn't go somewhere? Especially if you're talking about a long period of time, even if it's just a week. How can you honestly prove they didn't go to Florida? Unless you could prove where they were, every minute of that time. Alan said that he wouldn't have gone to Florida to kill Carol for any amount of money. For $1 million, he wouldn't have done it. And then he said he apparently chickened out. So he's saying that he couldn't have killed her for any amount of money. And then Joe took the stand in his own defense. And he, of course, had an answer for everything. It didn't matter what the feds brought up. It didn't matter what he was asked. It didn't matter what they said. He had an answer ready for everything. Joe said that he talked to Jeff about the fact that Alan wouldn't do anything that he told him to do. Anything Joe told him to do, he wouldn't do it. And they weren't getting along when they were working together. and suggested to Jeff that maybe Alan would be better off going back home to South Carolina. Which to me sounds kind of flimsy. That does sound kind of like, really? I mean, I know they didn't get along, but I don't believe Alan came to the farm from South Carolina. I know I could be wrong. I don't know, but I think, didn't Jeff meet him out in Nevada or something? I don't know that my first impulse would be to say, well, he needs to go back home to South Carolina if he came there from somewhere else. I think I would be more inclined to say, well, he needs to go back to Nevada. So it just sounds a little weird. I think he said that to kind of go along with the fact that Alan said at some point in a text message, I think to James, that he was going back home to South Carolina. So Joe was claiming after the fact that, well, I said he should go back there. Okay, so he said, we're not getting along, suggested to Jeff, maybe Alan needs to go back to South Carolina. So then that was at the point when Joe prepared that Thanksgiving meal for 150 people, and they showed some clips of that earlier. And he said that the people donated $3,000, I think, for that meal. That's what he's saying. I wasn't aware that they were taking donations for that. And why would they? What were the donations for? Because it didn't sound like he prepared that meal to raise money for anything. Maybe they said, but I don't remember them saying that he did it to raise money for any reason. So I find it kind of hard to believe that all these people, these 150 people, just spontaneously donated $3,000 to Jeff or Joe or John or John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, or I can't keep up with these names. It's driving me crazy. I find it kind of hard to believe that they would just spontaneously donate $3,000 for what? You know, this $3,000 just appears because they gave it to him at this Thanksgiving dinner, and then they gave the money to Alan so he could return home to South Carolina. And Joe says that Jeff gave that money to Alan. And then Doc had something to say about it. Doc said to him it appeared that Joe was set up each step of the way, but that he wasn't too bright about it. He said, you know, you're not going to get a hitman to travel across the country and kill somebody for $5,000. You're not going to get it for $3,000. You're not going to get it for $5,000. You might get it for $100,000, but you're not going to get that for $5,000. Nobody's going to do it for that. Like, well, how do you know so much about it? You seem pretty knowledgeable about, the going rates of hitmen. Maybe you and Carol worked something out and did. I don't know. I'm just saying. But he said, and you don't go hiring a hitman from a new friend. You don't go hiring a hitman from a dude you don't know that well. Again, I'm saying, it sounds like Doc has some really intimate knowledge about getting, hiring hitmen. I'm just saying. Okay, now again we come back to Joshua, who was Joe's campaign manager. Joshua said that Jeff set Joe up and that it was a tragedy. And then they talked to Jeff. Jeff said they call it set up. I call it investigate. I wasn't setting him up. I was just helping to investigate the matter. I didn't do anything wrong. And then after returning to the prison, after testifying, Joe seemed to feel pretty good about his testimony and the jury. He thought he did really well, and he felt good about the jury. And he said, if I get out, I'll have to start my life all over again. And he said he felt good about that because he didn't want to have to look over his shoulder anymore. He didn't want to have to deal with drama anymore, and he could start over fresh. But I can guarantee you, if by some miracle that man got out of prison, his life would not be drama-free. No, in my experience, if he is a narcissist, they like drama. They do. Just from my experience, they like drama. They like turmoil, conflict. They get bored easily. And if life is boring, they will stir something up. They will generate drama out of thin air. And I think Joe would always be surrounded by drama, because I think he's just one of those people that likes drama. and it just seems to kind of follow them like a cloud everywhere they go. So to say that he wanted a drama-free life, you can say that all you want. I don't believe it. I think you will never have a drama-free life. But that's what he said. He said he was tired of looking over his shoulder. He was tired of drama and wanted a fresh start. Okay, during the trial, the prosecutor showed footage from Joe's social media of Joe threatening to kill Carol, shooting the blow-up doll and harassing her and, just doing all these things to her. And as much as I dislike Carol, I really dislike the stuff Joe was doing. Like that, that's too far. You took it too far. And again, generating drama. They do that. They will find a way to generate some kind of turmoil. And Joe felt like he was a king, and his kingdom was under attack, and therefore he had the right to fight back. He felt like Carol was attacking his kingdom, and he could write his own rules and do whatever he wanted to protect his kingdom. Well, okay, so the jury came back in less than 4 hours, found Joe guilty on all counts. And Carol's husband said that definitely was a champagne and brie evening, which, yeah, I mean, I don't like Carol. I think she's horrible. I think she killed her husband. Not the one she's with now, but I couldn't imagine being, nah, I don't trust her. As much as I don't like her, if I had somebody doing the stuff to me that Joe had been doing to her for all those years, putting stuff out there on social media, like pretending to kill me and, talking about putting my head in a jar and stuff like that, I would be relieved if they were behind bars, honestly. I get that. I would not be able to rest easy until they were locked up. That's sick. Okay, and then they go back to Jeff and his wife Lauren, and they did an interview on the news and said that they were moving all the animals to a new location in a few months. And Lauren was pregnant, and they were talking about Jeff. They were going to have a nanny, and Jeff said he gets to pick the nanny. And he was showing pictures of, these hot women and said, well, if we're going to have a nanny, I want one that's nice to look at. And right before that, he said something about, you're going to get back in the gym. And when he talked about having a nanny that was nice to look at, if you just watch Lauren's face there for a second, she kind of looks down and she just has this sad, vacant look on her face. It's like this unnerving, quiet resignation. And in a way, I felt bad for her, but at the same time, it's like, you picked this life. I mean, you know what he's like. You've been with him and enjoyed, I'm sure, a lot of good times. And probably know a lot about him that he really hopes you never tell. I felt bad for her, but at the same time, it's like, well, you married him. You knew what he was like. And if you want to stay and tolerate it, I hope you don't, but I don't know. Just the look on her face made me sad. And maybe it was something totally different. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but she just looked really, it just made me sad, the look on her face when he started talking about getting a hot nanny. Because, I can't speak for her, but I know, she was very, very pregnant at this point. And I know I had both of my pregnancies. I didn't feel especially pretty or attractive when I was that big. I felt like a house. I felt like a beach whale. And, I think you can feel insecure. And so I think it was very insensitive of him to say that. But, especially the thing about, she's going to get back in the gym and I'm going to pick a hot nanny. And he pulled up his phone. It was like showing these pictures of these young hot women. I'm like, oh my God. I didn't like that. I don't like Jeff at all. I have a hard time finding anybody in this documentary that I care anything about. I can't like these people. But they did say that Jeff could still face charges down the road for something much larger. So Jeff is not out of the woods. I think he believes he is. He always has that smirk on his face like he got away with something. I think it's going to come back to get him. It's going to come back and bite him one day. I don't think they're done monitoring this situation. And it was really funny because then they go back to James. They go back to James, the businessman. And they're talking to him. I don't even remember what they were talking about because then at this one moment, He goes, hang on a damn minute. And they cut from that to a scene of him riding a jet ski while Eye of the Tiger is playing. And it's the most random. Like, what does that have to do with this documentary? It's this long shot of you hear Eye of the Tiger playing, and there's James riding a jet ski. It was so random. I literally laughed out loud at that. I'm like, what in the world? Okay, I forgot what he was talking about. I didn't even write anything down because once that scene started, I just set the remote down and went, what are they doing? Is this leading up to something? Why is he on a jet ski? I don't know. That didn't have anything to do with anything, I don't believe. Okay. So Joe was eager to give. He seems really eager to give information on others, and he wants to work with PETA regarding wildlife trafficking. Joe told PETA that Doc euthanizes tiger cubs that have aged out of the playtime where people who come to the Myrtle Beach Safari can play with the baby cubs. Says that he euthanizes them and then cremates them in a crematorium that he has on site to dispose of, all the evidence. That's interesting and horrible. Joe wants to see others in the big cat trade world go down with him, and I think he said he had like 37 names of people that he could take down. I'm like, well, what are you waiting for, dude? Do it. I'm all for it. Take them down. Okay, now you go back to Tim and Jeff. They were the partners in the partners in the zoo. Well, Tim and Jeff, after they moved to that new location, were not getting along very well. Tim was doing all the work, and then he realized that Jeff didn't really have any money, kind of like Joe did. It's all an act. He didn't really have that much money. And just like when Jeff was partners with Joe, he didn't really do anything at the park other than walk around in those weird, ripped, skinny jeans that he seems to have 500 pairs of because he wears them in literally every interview. And I think he wears like black pants under them or something. It's not the only pants he has. He has lots of them. So, see, Tim is doing all the work. He's paying for everything. And he just got sick of it. He couldn't take it anymore because he didn't feel like Jeff was doing his share. So now you've got it to where Tim is talking to Joe. And Joe is talking to PETA, and this is Jeff saying all this. Tim's talking to Joe. Joe's talking to PETA. And none of these people could stand each other 6 months ago. But now all of a sudden they're working together. But, in the end, with all of this, nobody wins, especially the animals. They lose out. They're hurt more than anybody. And Joe was talking about those chimpanzees. Oh, God, that broke my heart. He was talking about he had these 2 chimpanzees, and he kept them in cages for 10 years. And they were apart from one another, and they ended up going to, I can't remember where he said they went, maybe somewhere in Georgia or something, where they had a big area where they weren't in cages, they could run around, and there was some video of them hugging one another. And that was the first time they'd been able to do that. And it's like the first time it occurred to Joe, did I deny them of that for 10 years? Yeah. Like, oh my God. That's horrible. That is heartbreaking. And they brought this up too in the documentary. If you think of all the money and the resources that went into all of this, all of the stuff between Carol and Joe, all the litigation, all the money and resources that the government spent investigating all this, what you could have done to actually save endangered animals in the wild, if you took all that money and all that work and all that effort and put it towards that, how much of a difference it could have actually made for these animals. But no, we wasted it going around and around and around with all this crap. It's just sad. It is such a waste of resources. And it could be that Joe started the zoo with good purposes, maybe. Like maybe he meant to do well. But once the money started coming in, I think he kind of lost sight of that. And he just started focusing on the money and not the animals. So the animals were neglected more and more as time went on to get to the point you're feeding them expired meat from Walmart. And he's just looking at the money. He doesn't care about the animals as much anymore. And Rick was talking about, when he was filming the footage for the reality show, that he had to try to make it look like Joe cared about the animals. Had to kind of present him in such a way that it looked like he really cared. But he didn't. And he said he still has to live with that to this day. He still has guilt about it. Ultimately, Joe was sentenced to 22 years. And some stuff at the end said that the Big Cat Safety Act has not passed. I don't know if that's something Carol was trying to do. I don't know. And Doc's Myrtle Beach Safari was raided by the authorities in December 2019. I didn't hear anything about that. And it said that Doc has not responded to allegations of cub euthanasia, which, if he got raided, he ultimately may have to do some explaining for that, among other things. I would think that will come up. But that was the end of the documentary series, and it was sad. It was very sad that you have these toxic people just going around and around and around, ruining the lives of animals and other people in the process. It's like a whirlwind. It's like a tornado, and it's just pulling in other people and these poor animals in the process, and it's just making life miserable for everybody. And for what? For what? No, I don't know. I don't know. For their own sake, for attention, for power, for revenge, for a need for excitement. I don't know. It's just so sad. And it reminded me, I keep coming back to the cult thing. And I thought about this documentary I saw years ago. There was the History Channel did a documentary on Jim Jones, the guy who, where the Kool-Aid meme came from, oh, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't know if you call that a meme or what, it's a common thing and, that people use. It was actually Flavor Aid. It wasn't Kool-Aid, but everybody knows what Kool-Aid is. Not everybody knows what Flavor Aid is. They could get Flavor Aid cheaper, which is why they bought it. And they mixed up a toxic punch in these big barrels for everybody, and they put it in syringes for the little children. I thought about an interview that they did with this older lady, and the interview was done back after the Jonestown massacre in the late 70s. I think it was in 78. And she said, she was involved in the People's Temple back when I think around the time they arrived in California. They moved around a bit. They started in Indianapolis, but I think they went by a different name, and then they became the People's Temple at some point when they were in California. And she was involved when they were in California. And she said, it makes me sad because so many good things came from this church, but all anybody will ever remember is what happened in those last few days, which is so sad. And I kind of get what she's saying, because I think Jim Jones started out with good intentions. I think he meant well. I think he genuinely meant to help people. I think he wanted to try to do some good in the world. But somewhere along the way, he just fell off the path, and, he got into drugs, and he felt like he was king of the world, kind of like Joe did. And he lost sight of what he was originally trying to do, and with horrible results. And, it may have been kind of similar for Joe. Maybe he started out with good intentions, but it just, I don't know, he lost his way. And it didn't end well for anybody. And it's sad. It's just sad. But yeah, I really enjoyed the documentary. I did. It might be hard for some people to watch. If you have a hard time hearing about animal abuse, you probably don't want to watch it. If you have a problem with profanity, you probably don't want to watch it. I enjoyed it. I hate it happened, but I think the documentary was very well done, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did. It was fascinating. I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next, because I just couldn't believe it. You can't make this stuff up. It's crazy. I couldn't make up a story that crazy. That's something. But anyway, that is my impression of Tiger King. And a lot of people have asked me if I want to do a role play of Carol Baskin. I kind of would, but I need to give it some thought. I don't know how I would want to do it, and I need to find a wig that would work. So I'm going to have to go looking for a wig that looks like her hair. I need some animal print clothes. And see, the problem with that right now, all the thrift stores are closed. None of them are open around here. You can't go. They're shut. So I'm going to have to go somewhere like, I guess I'm going to have to go on eBay and see what I can find on there. eBay is a great place to get wigs. That's where I get most of my wigs anyway. So go on there. I'm going to go on there and see if I can find a wig that will work. And maybe some animal print, maybe an animal print blouse or something. And I'm going to I want to watch some footage of her just to get a feel for how she talks, the kind of things she says, and then I have to figure out what I would want to have her do. I can't literally call her that. I don't want to get in trouble with anybody, but I'd have to give her a different name. That's not hard though, but I'm thinking about it. I think that would be fun. Yeah, so, and if you're in the area, next week they're doing an article about me in Yes Weekly. I did a follow-up interview with them this afternoon, and so I'll get a copy of it. I think it comes out Wednesday. I'll get a copy and maybe do a video on it. So if you can't get it, I'll show it to you. But anyway, that is it, and my note-taking is done for now. I may do some more of these. I really enjoyed it. If you want me to do more, or if you know of a documentary series or something that something like this that might be good, let me know. Maybe I can do some more. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you're watching Tiger King, I hope you enjoyed that too. And I will see you again really soon.